G'day, welcome to Down Woodworks. In today's video I'm going to be making a live edge tabletop out of some small timber slabs. The interesting part of this video is that I'm going to try and cut those slabs myself out of a log that I have in the backyard. I'm going to attempt to cut those slabs using my garden variety hardware store bought cheap chainsaw. The chainsaw is a 38cc 35cm bar chainsaw, so it's not very big. The length of the bar is only just slightly longer than the diameter of the log I'm cutting, so not sure how we're going to go there, and it may be underpowered. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to do a vertical setup. That way I've got gravity on my side as well, which can only help. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take these two steel sections. Sorry, I've already clamped a piece of hardwood across the handle. I figured the handle was the most solid part of the saw, and when I did drill through that, it is solid plastic, it's not hollow. So I've got that piece there. I'm going to attach these two steel tubes to each side of that to act as runners, and they're actually going to run up and down some vertical posts. Now that's 50mm square, and these steel runners, I'll call them, are about 60 or 65mm square, but that won't be an issue as long as I have the setup so that the runner is pressed hard up against this edge of this upright and on the outside edge of this upright. That way the setup cannot move sideways, it'll just still be locked in that one position. It will allow movement, rocking movement front and back, but that's fine because that movement will be in line with the blade and in line with the cut. I'm going to build the rig on this old and very heavy solid core door. To get the position for the mounting brackets at the base of the rig, I marked the spacing of the uprights at the top where these cross braces were, and that way I could be sure the uprights would be parallel. This bracket is one of the original brackets that we used to fix these aluminium posts down to a floor or concrete slab, so I'm just going to reuse them, and I'll double them up just to make them a bit sturdier. I'll also use this small offcut to align them in the correct position. Perfect. Before fixing the posts in place, I had to insert the runners for the chainsaw. I used a single shim of cardboard when setting the distance of the runners just to give me a very small clearance so that the rig would slide up and down easily. Once I was happy that the saw was perpendicular to the base, I attached it to the runners with screws. So here's the rig ready to go. It's braced in both directions so that the uprights were perpendicular to the base, front to back and side to side. And I set the log in an upright position using these wide boards screwed into the base of the log and into a separate baseboard. Now it was time to see if this would actually work. And the answer is yes, it worked great. The idea of the separate baseboard was that I could just slide it over to make the next cut, and the log would remain in the same vertical plane. Well, I have to say this worked out far better than I anticipated considering what I was working with. There are a few chainsaw marks, but nothing my thickness planer won't get rid of. Because of the width of these slabs, I decided to use a thickness planer for both faces. But to do that, I had to have one flat, straight face to start with. So I mounted each slab to a piece of melamine and used that as the reference surface to mill the first side of the slabs. Once the first face was milled flat and true, I could then just run them through the machine and do the other side. Well, here's the two slabs straight out of the thickness planer. I've got to say, they look pretty good. Obviously still need some sanding, but just looking at them, there's a slight bit of tear out along the grain lines. These two faces are the better faces. The undersides have a bit more tear out, so that's what's going to decide the tops. I'm going to measure the base of the sewing machine stand to get the width of the tabletop. I think it's around 500, which means that both of these are going to be cut at about 250 mil. This is the live edge I want to keep, this one and that one. So these will actually be, if you can imagine, a straight cut through there and joined together. When it came down to cutting each slab to its final width, I wanted the straight cut for the glue edge to be parallel to the front edge, but because that live edge wasn't straight, I extended my table saw fence so that the live edge would be against the fence during the entire length of the cut. A quick pass on the jointer cleaned up the glue edges, ready for gluing. I used a slot cutting tool in my router to cut the slots for the biscuits. This is why melamine is great for a work surface. I cleaned up the majority of the glue squeeze out with a chisel and filled any cracks with 2-part 5-minute epoxy. I also used 2-part epoxy to fill this crack in one of the live edges. After a final sanding, it was time to apply some clear polyurethane. I didn't want to wait for the underside to dry fully, so I used these that I made earlier to sit the tabletop onto so I could keep spraying. I did a light sanding between coats with 800 grit wet and dry and some water. Finally, it was time to do the base. Without going into too much detail, I used a mixture of paint stripper and elbow grease to strip it back for repainting. The high pressure washer helped a lot too. The stand already has these mounting holes in it, which is good, don't have to make those. Although what I will do is these two outside holes, just to allow for expansion of the tabletop, which is typically across the grain, which will be in this direction. I'm just going to elongate those two holes. Black looks so much better than green.